I found out I didn't matter over brunch toast and casual indifference. My cousin Marissa didn't even look up from her phone when she said it. Honestly, Noah, he just forgot about you. That he was my younger brother, Ethan. The same Ethan I helped raise. The same Ethan I wired money to every month when he was studying in London because our parents couldn't afford to support him abroad. The same Ethan who once called me sobbing after a failed exam and stayed on the line until 3 a.m. while I talked him off the ledge. That Ethan forgot about me. He'd flown back last week after finishing his master's degree overseas. And apparently, our parents had planned a massive welcome home party for him. String lights, live jazz, a champagne tower, even a rented tent in the backyard. Everyone was there. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't seen in years. Even Mrs. Henderson from down the block, the one who used to complain about our noisy sleepovers. Everyone except me. I didn't get an invite. I scrolled through Instagram as photo after photo popped up. Ethan smiling with our parents under gold streamers, Ethan raising a glass while someone played saxophone in the background, Ethan dancing with his fiancée Lena while the caption read, "The people who matter most." I wasn't tagged. I wasn't even mentioned. I stared at the screen until my chest ached. Then I did the only thing that made sense. I closed the app, opened my laptop, and booked a one-way ticket on a luxury train ride through the Rockies. No explanation, no text. I packed a small bag and left the next morning. While they toasted to Ethan's accomplishments, I drank black coffee in a leather seat, watching sunlight fracture across snowy peaks in silence. I called Mom that night, just once to ask why I wasn't invited. Her answer: "We assumed you were busy with work. You've always been so sensitive." Sensitive. That's what they called it. Not forgotten, not excluded, just too emotional. But this wasn't sensitivity. It was clarity. I wasn't overlooked. I was erased. And I wasn't going to beg for space in a family that only remembered me when something needed fixing. If they wanted a party without me, they could have it. I had somewhere better to be. Somewhere I didn't have to prove I belonged. I didn't find out about the party through an invite. I found out through an Instagram post. A video, actually. Ethan clinking glasses, grinning wide, surrounded by family in the backyard where we used to play wiffle ball as kids. Golden string lights overhead. Someone played soft jazz. The caption read, "So proud of our golden boy. Welcome home, Ethan." My name wasn't there. Neither was my face. I wasn't invited. Wasn't even mentioned. For a while, I convinced myself there had been a mistake. Maybe the invitation got lost. Maybe Mom forgot to hit send. So I texted her casually. "Hey, want me to help set up for Ethan's return?" It took her 4 hours to reply. "Oh, it's mostly under control. We figured you were busy with work." Busy with work. That's what they told themselves to justify cutting me out of my own brother's homecoming. Never mind that I was the one who covered Ethan's first semester deposit when our parents said their accounts were frozen. Never mind that I filled out his visa forms when he got overwhelmed. Or that I paid $1,400 to fly his fiancée Lena to London so she wouldn't leave him, and told her it was from him. Never mind that the very life they were now celebrating was one I helped quietly build behind the scenes. Marissa tried to soften the blow. "It's not that deep, Caleb," she said. "He's just been gone a while. People change." I wanted to believe that. But people don't forget the ones who catch them when they fall. They just stop needing them, and pretend forgetting is the same thing as healing. That night, I packed a bag, turned off my phone, and left. Booked a panoramic luxury train through the Rockies. Glass domes, no cell signal, just trees, sky, and silence. While they danced under rented lights, I watched a sunrise spill over snow-covered cliffs. While they clinked glasses to Ethan's bright future, I sipped red wine and finally exhaled. If you're not on the guest list, make your own destination. I didn't leave out of spite. I left because staying would have meant accepting invisibility as love. I didn't walk away to make them hurt. I walked away to stop hurting myself. The train hummed beneath me as the Rockies unfolded outside the window, snow-capped peaks, golden trees, the kind of view that made silence feel sacred. I hadn't checked my phone in 2 days. No signal, no noise, just me, a glass of wine, and the stillness I'd been chasing my whole life. I didn't know yet that while I was gliding through mountains, everything back home was crashing to the ground. When we pulled into a small town stop and signal returned, my phone practically exploded. Missed calls, voicemails, texts, one after another. First from Mom, "We need to talk." Then Dad, "Things got out of hand." Then Lena, Ethan's fiancée, "I'm sorry, I didn't know. You were right." My stomach tightened. Something had snapped. I opened a message from Lena. The first line hit like a punch. "I found the bank records." Turns out, she'd discovered that Ethan hadn't paid for the wedding deposits. Not the venue, not the planner, not even the ring. All of it came from the family account, which, unbeknownst to her, was my account. The one I'd been quietly funding for years. She'd stumbled on a folder on his laptop labeled, "Worst case, Alex." Inside? A script for how to discredit me if I ever called him out. Alex gets jealous. He's dramatic. He always makes it about himself. I stared at my screen, heart pounding but strangely calm. I wasn't shocked. I was seen, finally. Then came the group chat meltdown, family circle, 13 members suddenly awake. "Alex, we need to talk. Don't make this worse. You've made your point." No one asked if I was okay. No one said sorry. They just panicked because the scaffolding they'd built on my silence was collapsing. The real moment, though? "Grandma." Out of nowhere, she called. "You didn't go to the party," she said. I hesitated. "No." Her voice didn't waver. "Good. They didn't deserve you there." Then she asked, gently, "Dinner this week? Just us?" I almost cried. I'd spent years being useful, never valued, holding everyone up while they treated me like background noise. But in the space between pine trees and train tracks, I realized something powerful. You don't have to burn bridges. You just have to stop rebuilding them alone. They made the party. I made my exit. And this time, I wasn't looking back. When I got back to the city, the air felt heavier, like it knew something had shifted. I hadn't spoken to anyone in my family since stepping off that train. My inbox was overflowing, my voicemail full, but I hadn't listened to a single message. That quiet ride through the Rockies gave me something no family gathering ever had: clarity. And now, I was ready to return it all, not with fury, but with truth. Mom called and insisted on a family discussion, said we needed to talk things out for the sake of everyone. I agreed. Not because I wanted reconciliation, but because I had one final thing to say. When I walked into the family house, the same backyard where they toasted Ethan without me, the mood was different. Stale, stiff, like the party had left, a stain no one could scrub out. Ethan was there, sitting tight-lipped on the couch. Dad stood near the fireplace, arms crossed. Lena wasn't there. Her absence said more than words ever could. Mom tried to start with small talk. I didn't engage. I walked straight to the living room, pulled out my phone, and opened my banking app. Then I turned the screen around. 48,600, I said. That's how much I've given to this family in the last 3 years. Rent, tuition, deposits, emergencies, covered, quietly, without question, and I wasn't even invited to a garden party. They froze. Ethan's jaw clenched. Dad muttered something about not airing grievances. Mom scoffed, called me sensitive, like that word excused their erasure of me. Ethan finally spoke. "You're twisting everything," I laughed. "No, Ethan. I'm finally hearing it straight." He stood defensive. You didn't say anything. How were we supposed to know you felt this way? I texted. I offered to help. I asked. And you ignored me, repeatedly. You forgot me on purpose. Mom tried to soothe it over, reaching for my arm. I pulled away. I was done being touched only when it was convenient. I walked over to the mantel, picked up a family photo, Ethan at graduation, me cropped halfway out, and placed it face down. I'm not angry, I said, turning toward them. I'm just done. Done being quiet. Done being used. Done pretending this is love. And then I left, without yelling, without crying. Just walking away from people who only knew how to hold their hands out, never how to hold me up. The moment I closed the door behind me, I felt it. The silence. Not the heavy kind that used to fill my apartment after a draining call from my family. This was different. It was clean. It was peace. But that peace didn't last long. By the next morning, my phone was vibrating with messages like a swarm of angry bees. Ethan called 3 times before sunrise, each voicemail more frantic than the last. Mom sent a long email titled, "Time to Reconnect," filled with spiritual quotes about forgiveness. Dad's text came in next. Your mother's heart is breaking. Are you proud of yourself? Proud? No. But I was free. They weren't reaching out because they were sorry. They were scrambling. Because without me, the safety net was gone. I'd been the quiet backbone of the family for years, bailing Ethan out of missed rent, wiring emergency money for Mom's unexpected expenses, paying for holiday flights just so no one had to admit they couldn't afford them. And I never asked for thanks. I never demanded recognition. I just hoped one day they'd see me. But they never did. They only saw what I could give. So when I disappeared, they didn't lose a brother or a son. They lost access. Still, part of me expected at least one real apology. Instead, I got accusations. You're blowing this out of proportion. You always take things too personally. It wasn't even that serious. As if erasing me from a celebration I helped fund was a minor oversight. As if being left out was a me problem, not a reflection of everything they'd come to. Expect from me silence, sacrifice, surrender. I didn't answer any of them, not because I was being cruel, but because I'd finally learned the difference between being loved and being used. For years, I thought enduring meant I was strong. That swallowing pain quietly was what made me a good sibling, a good son. But all it did was teach them that I'd always be there, no matter how much they overlooked me. Not anymore. That day, I canceled every payment tied to them. The family Netflix, the shared Amazon, the backup credit card Ethan once begged me to. Co-sign on. Gone. I wasn't angry. I was reclaiming what they never appreciated. Myself. The moment I walked into my parents' house, I could feel the tension clinging to the walls like smoke. Mom greeted me with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. Dad didn't even stand up. Ethan sat in the living room like he was waiting for a sentencing, arms crossed, jaw tight. I almost turned around and walked out. But I didn't. I stayed. Because this wasn't just about the party I wasn't invited to, it was about everything that had led up to it. Every overlooked gesture, every time they called me too sensitive instead of just admitting they hurt me. I took a seat, silent. Mom launched in right away. We need to talk this out. This family is falling apart. Her voice cracked just enough to sound sincere, but not enough to feel real. Alex, you made things worse by disappearing. People asked where you were. It was humiliating. I blinked. Humiliating for who? Dad chimed in. You could have just let it go. You always overreact. That was their favorite word, overreact. Not abandoned, not used, overreacting. Like missing from every photo. Every toast, every mention wasn't deliberate. Ethan finally looked at me. You could have said something if it bothered you. I laughed, bitter and sharp. Like when I texted Mom asking to help with the party and got ignored, or when I found out I wasn't invited from a cousin's Instagram story. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Good. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. You know how much I've sent over the past 3 years? I turned the screen to them. $48,600, quietly, without complaint. And what did I get? Not even a mention, not even a seat in the backyard. Silence. Finally. I wasn't your family. I was your funding. I stood up. But that stops now. Ethan looked stunned. You're my brother. No, I said, walking toward the door. I was your lifeline. Now you'll learn how to swim. I left without slamming the door. Not because I wasn't angry, but because I didn't need to prove anything anymore. I didn't want revenge. I wanted freedom. And this time, I wasn't coming back to fix their mess. I was walking out to save what was left of myself. The morning. After I walked out of that house, I expected guilt to find me. I waited for it, like some reflex I couldn't unlearn. But instead, all I felt was silence. Not the kind that isolates, but the kind that heals. I sipped my coffee in the quiet of my apartment, staring at the photo I'd turned face down on the mantel the day before. Ethan's graduation. Me, cropped halfway out, like I was never supposed to be there in the first place. Maybe I wasn't. My phone lit up again. First Dad. Your brother's not eating. Your mother is in tears. You happy now? Then Mom. We raised you better than this. Family doesn't abandon each other. I read the words, and for the first time, I didn't
flinch.
Because I hadn't abandoned them. They abandoned me the moment they decided I was only valuable when they needed something. They raised me to believe love looked like sacrifice. Turns out, love without respect is just servitude. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. They weren't trying to apologize. They were trying to reel me back in. That's what users do when their access is cut off. They confuse boundaries for betrayal. But this wasn't betrayal. This was liberation. Later that day, I posted a photo from my train ride, those snow-covered peaks, that stretch of sky I hadn't known I needed. The caption was simple. When they stop clapping, build your own stage. Within minutes, friends I hadn't heard from in years were in my DMs. Strangers shared it. Even Clara, Ethan's fiancée, liked the post. The same woman who'd left him after discovering he'd built his entire image on a lie, funded by me. She messaged, I wish I had known. I'm sorry. I believed her. That evening, Lila called. She whispered, It's chaos in the group chat. Grandma's furious. Mom's threatening to rewrite the will. They think you've lost it. I laughed. No, I said, I think I finally found it. I stood by the window as the sun dipped behind the skyline. I didn't feel bitter. I felt still. For the first time, I wasn't bracing for the next hit. I was breathing. Free. And finally, I wasn't the one carrying the fire. I was walking away from the burn. The first time I truly understood what it meant to be invisible was when I opened my phone and saw Ethan's engagement announcement, a polished photo of him and Clara beneath a string of fairy lights, the caption, reading, surrounded by those who matter most. I wasn't in the picture. I wasn't even tagged. But the venue, the catering, the down payment on her ring, all paid for with the same account I'd quietly linked to his when our parents said they were tight on funds. And he stood there, like a king, like he'd built the throne himself. I sat in my apartment, the walls too quiet, the air too still, staring at a celebration I financed but wasn't welcome at. It wasn't about the money, it never was. It was about being used like a tool, then tossed aside like a receipt no one wanted to claim. I closed the app. I didn't cry. I didn't even speak. I just opened my laptop, canceled the auto payments, and logged out for good. The fallout came fast. Clara found out first. She'd been going through Ethan's laptop, stumbled on a spreadsheet labeled Alex Emergency Plan. It was a sick joke, lines he'd rehearsed in case I ever exposed the truth. Alex is just jealous. He likes to play victim. The same brother I covered for, protected, paid for, planning his defense like I was a threat, not his lifeline. By the time I stepped off that train through the Rockies, my phone exploded. Clara had moved out. Lila messaged, panicked. Dad sent a cold text. "We need to fix this." Mom, of course, tried guilt. "You're tearing the family apart." But I knew the truth. I wasn't tearing anything. I just stopped holding it up. I didn't reply. I didn't defend myself. I just sat on the edge of my bed, looked at the stack of receipts I'd kept all those years, not for proof, but for moments like this, when they'd pretend I was nothing, and I could show them exactly what nothing built. They forgot the one. Person who never asked for anything in return would one day stop giving, and when he did, their whole empire of lies would collapse. I wasn't missing. I was done. And silence was the loudest thing I'd ever said. The morning after everything unraveled, I stood in my kitchen staring at a coffee mug I didn't remember, pouring. It had gone cold, untouched, like me. My phone buzzed for the 100th time. Another message from Mom. "Enough already, Alex. This family is falling apart and you're letting it happen." I almost laughed. Falling apart? No. It was finally falling into truth. And for once, I wasn't rushing in to catch the pieces. They always assumed I'd come back, that I'd cool off, fold like I always did, and slip right back into being the reliable brother, the silent supporter, the invisible son. But this time was different, because this time I wasn't angry. I was done. Marcus hadn't spoken to me since Clara left. Eli kept sending vague apologies, the kind that mean nothing. And Mom? She was spinning her usual web, playing martyr, deflecting blame, painting me as the cold one. But no one, not one of them, asked how I was doing. Not once. That's when I realized it had never been about me. It had been about access. My help, my money, my silence. They hadn't lost me, they'd lost control over me. And now they were scrambling, calling it heartbreak when really it was just withdrawal. So I leaned into the quiet. I started waking up early just to walk alone. I deleted the family group chat, changed every shared password, took myself to breakfast and ordered the most expensive thing on the menu just because I could. I didn't explain. I didn't justify. I didn't answer. For the first time, I didn't owe anyone anything. And then I posted the photo. The one from the train, the mountains behind me, a backpack by my feet. The caption read, "When they burn the bridge, don't swim after them. Build your own damn boat." It spread fast. Even Clara liked it. Lila texted me a screenshot of the family chat losing it. Mom, "He's mocking us now?" Dad, "Let it go. We lost him." They didn't lose me. They never had me. They had my labor, my loyalty, my silence. But me? The real me? They never even looked hard enough to see him. And now, they never will. Alex's story is one of quiet sacrifice turned painful awakening. For years, he poured his time, money, and emotional energy into supporting his younger brother Ryan, funding his education abroad, covering his rent, even flying his fiancée across the world to save their relationship. All without recognition, without thanks. But when Ryan returned home from London, Alex wasn't just excluded from the welcome home party, he was forgotten. Watching from the sidelines as his family celebrated without him, Alex realized the depth of his invisibility. Hurt turned into clarity. Instead of begging for a place at the table, he booked a luxury train ride through the Rockies, his own private escape from a family that never truly saw him. As secrets unraveled and consequences crashed down, Ryan's lies exposed, his relationship destroyed. Alex stood firm. No more bailing them out, no more silence, no more sacrifice. In stepping away, Alex reclaimed his identity, his boundaries, and most importantly, his peace. The lesson? Love without respect becomes exploitation. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is walk away. This story reminds us that you don't owe anyone your silence or suffering just because they share your blood. Choosing. Yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. It's freedom. And it's long overdue.